It's really hard to look back because no one ever asked me this. No one ever asked me these questions. No one knew what was wrong. They just knew that when you first get polio, your leg gets numb, you can't move anymore. So my parents took me to a hospital known as Cămin Spital pentru Deficient Copii, home hospital for irrecoverable children. They never came back and just left me there. So the hospital put me into an orphanage. I grew up in the orphanage for 11 years. One of the things we discovered was a TV show called Dallas, and I loved it. I thought, wow, that is so amazing, that is beautiful. America was heaven, really, is what it was. Next thing you knew, Americans were in Romania. They came to our orphanage and were interested in adopting. I was so excited, overwhelmed. I just said, yes, I'm finally going to America. This is happening for me. Wow. The tall lady kept crying. I asked the translator, why is she crying? The translator said, because she's so happy she found you. She's been looking for you. And that's who I want my mom to be, is what I told her. I asked my adopted mom, are you guys coming back? Yes, we're coming back tomorrow for you. The next day, I waited at the window for hours, and I thought, they're not coming. They just stood me up. I felt like I was being played again. My hopes were up. I was never gonna get out. When I heard that they were back, I was so happy that everyone forgot and left.
From ABC News, around the world and into your home, the stories that touch your life.
Tonight, we'll follow the story of an 11-year-old boy who made it to America after he was written off as hopeless by the Romanian government. Perhaps you remember Izidor. His crime, contracting polio shortly after birth.
The way I walk, I'm embarrassed sometimes. I gotta admit that. So the brace that I wear today is 4 years old. Well, one of the lock joints actually broke. The guy at the Creative Technology in Colorado that fixed the lock for me, he was so nice. I carry a guilt for that because, you know, I get bills in the mail from him, and it's hard to make it financially.
I saw just a little quick report, and I kind of perked up of like, what children, what orphanages. I was on a plane, I was there within a week. And we went from orphanage to orphanage to orphanage. You know, and there were just kids and babies everywhere. Nicolae Ceausescu was a megalomaniac dictator who ruled Romania with an iron fist and basically destroyed the country. He outlawed abortion, he outlawed contraceptive. Every woman was required to have 5 children. And his feeling was, in order to have a strong country, he needed to populate the country. And so there were literally hundreds of thousands of children that were warehoused in state-run institutions and orphanages.
Tonight, 2020 begins with a dilemma. A story that's so shocking that we know those of you at home are going to be disturbed by what you see. But a story that's so important that we just couldn't look the other way.
And I think Tom Jarrell's report were the first photographs to show the cruelty, and people were outraged. I'm Dr. Jane Aronson, and I'm an adoption medicine specialist. When you hear me talk about Romania, as the expression goes, you cut your teeth, right? This was how I learned about, about adoption. Sorry. I haven't talked about this in a long time. It was the most unreal experience that I've ever had in my life. It's so heinous, it's so vile that you can't even take it in. I felt nauseous and faint, almost like guilty for even being there. They were skeletal and emaciated. And I've never seen that anywhere except Romania.
You know, that's Izidor's reality. And there's probably issues for any adoptive kid, you know, and for Izidor maybe more than the typical kid, because he wasn't abandoned to another family. He was abandoned in a hellhole. But he went into a really loving family in San Diego.
Remember the three musketeers we met at Saguenay-Martier? Well, they now live in the same neighborhood in San Diego and are still the best of friends. 13-year-old Izidor has become the All-American baseball player.
At a certain point as a teenager, he lashed out at that, and he'll say, you know, I guess I was subconsciously trying to get them to reject me. I didn't feel like I deserved this.
Oh, I was so worried about him because he wouldn't talk at that point anymore. And he would just be in there in the dark listening to his music. He wouldn't talk to us about it. At that time, we were the first people to get children out of Romania. I mean, babies had come out, but they weren't experiencing all of these difficulties yet. And we just didn't know what to do. He had a unique problem that we didn't know how to help him with.
So that's the problem with families, where they were not prepared for what their kids' development would be like. There's some people who think that because kids can't remember what happened to them the first 2 or 3 years of life, therefore it won't have an impact on them. And that's not true. What is it about being raised in an institution that leads to such bad outcomes for many kids? So that's why we landed in Romania and why we settled on looking at kids in institutions, because it represented a profound form of early neglect. So in our project, we have found consistently and long-lasting experiences are important for facilitating brain development. Around between 22 and 24 months, there's a cut point. Unless those experiences occur in that window of time, then development can go off track. What happens in situations of neglect is that the experiences are lacking. So the brain is sort of in a holding pattern saying, okay, so where's the experience, where's the experience, where's the experience? So if there are no experiences, then the brain is going to be miswired. We see evidence in our children who are raised in institutions. They tend to have much lower IQs, a lot of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, a lot of anxiety, attachment problems, difficulties in interpersonal relationships. They actually show smaller brains. And finally, when we record the brain's electrical activity, they show much less electrical activity. And so what parents should be expecting is that the longer they've spent in that institution, the more effort they may have to put into treatment or interventions for their kids, with the expectation they may never get that kid back to even keel. So there are big lessons for this project for not just kids coming out of institutions, but kids who experience severe maltreatment early in life. The big question is what happens 10 or 20 or 30 years down the line. And I think no one really knows the answer to that question, but the speculation would be, as you go through life, you have more and richer experiences. And if you don't have the hardware to take advantage of those experiences, you'll find yourself increasingly disadvantaged.
I moved out of my parents' house when I was about 17. So for a while I just moved from place to place, all in the same city. August 2011. I took a plane and flew out to Denver, Colorado, and tried to begin a new life. Here in Colorado, I don't have a family close by. Ultimately, I think I like being on my own. You know, it's a wishful thinking. If it were possible, I would live in Romania, back where I grew up in Saguenay-Martier. It's always going to be my hometown.
I think his life dream is to work with and in Romania. I think he will be coming back and forth. He's told me that he feels to make a change in Romania, he's going to have to spend time in Romania.
Watching him kind of grow up and then now seeing him as a full-grown adult who wants to go back and now make a film, you know, about the kids who didn't get out. So, I mean, it's a full, you know, I don't feel like the circle is ended yet. I sort of feel like I will always be doing the Romania story as long as I'm breathing. I think it was trip 3 or 4 where I ended up finding a baby and went back a month later and did adopt her. And then several years later, went back with the plan to adopt a second child.
One of the reasons I'm doing this documentary is due to the fact that I don't want this to be repeated, to have more Romanian orphans or orphans around the world.
Together, we hope to give a voice to all the children who had not been given their chance?
My life is speaking awareness.
People Somebody said they talked to someone who says they
what they can do to help. And I guess trying to find solution to people that are struggling. People that have the ability to achieve, to advance, to do something valuable with their life. That's what I would like to accomplish as part of my life. I have been known more for being an orphan for almost 22 years now. That is my identity, and sometime I would like to close that chapter and not be known as an orphan.